The polished silence of the family living room was a weapon, and it was aimed directly at her. Elena felt the weight of 4 pairs of eyes, each a distinct flavor of contempt. The air, smelling faintly of lemon polish and the expensive, spicy cologne her husband wore, felt too thin to breathe. "You are just a broke housewife." The words came from her 15-year-old son, Leo, and they landed with the force of a physical blow. He didn't just speak them, he spat them out, his face, so young and yet so hard, contorted in disgust. "There is no way I am living with you. Do you have any idea how expensive my sneakers are? Just don't ruin my life." Elena's hand, hidden in the pocket of her worn cardigan, clenched instinctively. Her fingers brushed against a small, folded piece of paper. It wasn't a lottery ticket. It was a wire transfer confirmation slip, printed from her mother's computer just 2 days prior. A confirmation for $320 million, the result of a forgotten biotech stock portfolio inherited from a distant aunt, an account that had sat dormant for 2 decades before exploding in an acquisition that had made the news feeds of people far more important than her. Her husband, Mark, had no idea. Her son, Leo, had no idea. Mark, a man she had loved since college, a man whose ambition she had tirelessly supported, adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke shirt. He sneered, a small, ugly twisting of his lips. He was enjoying this. He wanted this degradation. Listen to the boy, Elena. He knows which side his bread is buttered on. Beside him on the cream linen sofa sat Dr. Chloe Benson, the university professor he had been sleeping with for the last 8 months. Chloe, with her perfect auburn blowout and serene, intellectual smile, reached out to place a perfectly manicured hand on Mark's arm. It was a gesture of ownership, of victory. "We just want this to be amicable, Elena," Chloe said, her voice a smooth, condescending balm. "For the children." "Exactly," Mark's mother, Margaret, chimed in from the armchair, her voice like gravel. "Now, let's be sensible. Mark gets the house, his career, and he gets Leo. You can have your little girl. And Mark is being very generous with the alimony offer, considering you haven't earned $1 in 16 years. Elena's gaze drifted from her son's cold, defiant face to her daughter's. Sophia, small and quiet at only 14, was trembling. Her eyes, wide with a mixture of fury and betrayal, were fixed on her older brother. "Leo, how can you say that to Mom?" Sophia's voice was a small, brave tremor in the suffocating quiet. "She's done everything for you, for both of us." Leo rolled his eyes, a perfect, practiced imitation of his father. "She used Dad's money to do it. Without Dad paying for everything, what is she? How is she going to take care of us? Look at her." He gestured at Elena, his hand sweeping to encompass her faded jeans, her simple top. "She doesn't even know how the world works." His gaze was filled with a profound, chilling disdain. "Sophia, if you want to go live in some tiny apartment and be a poor loser, go ahead, but I'm not. I'm staying with Dad." Shock, cold and absolute, flooded Elena's system, momentarily drowning out the rage. It was a physical sensation, like being plunged into ice water. This was the boy she had held. This was the child she had saved. Leo had been born at 28 weeks, a tiny, fragile creature weighing less than 3 pounds. The doctors had been grim. His first 2 months were a blur of beeping machines, ventilators, and sterile white rooms. Elena, then a rising star at a prestigious marketing firm, a senior analyst pulling in a 6-figure salary and on the fast track to partner, had not hesitated. She had walked away from her corner office, from her achievements, from the person she had been, and never looked back. She became a full-time caregiver. For 16 years, her entire world had revolved around nurturing. Leo was a sickly child, plagued by severe asthma and a compromised immune system. He couldn't eat the cafeteria food. So, Elena woke up at 5 o'clock every single morning. She learned to be a gourmet chef, a nutritionist, a baker. She packed him balanced, organic lunches, driving them to his school every day, rain or shine, so he could have a hot meal. She sat through endless PTA meetings, volunteered for every field trip, managed every detail of their lives so that Mark could focus on his climb up the corporate ladder at Sunset Corporation. And now, all of it, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every ounce of love she had poured into this child, had been reduced to a single, disdainful sentence. "You're just a housewife." In that moment, she felt the last vestiges of maternal warmth for him flicker and die. It was a terrifying, hollow feeling. The blood in her veins ran cold. Leo took her silence for weakness, for hesitation. He grew anxious, his adolescent arrogance faltering for just a second. "Mom, don't be selfish. You're always talking about love. If you really cared about me, you'd let me go. You'd want me to have a good life." A laugh, dry and sharp, escaped Elena's throat. It startled everyone in the room. "Fine," she said, her voice flat and void of all emotion. "Go." What none of them knew was that the $320 million, currently sitting in her mother's name, was legally untouchable in the divorce. Her mother, Clara, had insisted on it. "This is your escape, Elena," she had said, her voice firm. "Not his." Elena had planned to use a small portion of it to hire the best divorce attorney in Boston and fight for custody of both her children. She had been prepared to show the courts Mark's infidelity, his emotional neglect, but now, looking at the ungrateful, materialistic stranger her son had become, she realized he wasn't worth the fight. He was his father's son. He was Margaret's creation. Speaking of Margaret, the older woman smiled, a grotesque pulling of her thin lips, revealing teeth stained with nicotine. "Good. See? That was easy. You take Sophia and go. Move far away. We don't want you hanging around, making things awkward." Elena turned her gaze back to Leo. He was already lounging on the sofa, pulling out his phone to watch some mindless video, completely oblivious. His own grandmother had just openly, cruelly insulted his mother and his sister. He didn't even react. Not a word, not a glance. She was done. She had given up on him completely. "I'm still married to Mark, you know," Elena said, the calmness in her own voice surprising her. "Technically, this is still my house too." Margaret scoffed. "Not for long. I'll call Mark right now and tell him to take the rest of the day off to finalize the papers. You can be out by this afternoon. Chloe is moving in tomorrow. We need to air the place out." At the mention of Chloe's name, Leo finally looked up from his phone, his eyes bright with excitement. "Wait, Grandma, is Chloe really moving in tomorrow?" Margaret beamed, reaching over to pat his head. "That's right, my boy. She's about to be your new mom. Are you happy?" Leo nodded eagerly, his earlier cruelty now replaced by a fawning, desperate enthusiasm. "Yes. Chloe's amazing. She has a PhD and teaches at the university. She's important." Even Sophia, who had been desperately trying to hold the family together with the sheer force of her will, was shocked by her brother's shamelessness. She finally snapped, "You are unbelievable. Mom has taken care of you for your entire life, and you're just going to replace her with the woman who ruined our family? You're a joke, Leo." Leo didn't even flinch. He shrugged, a gesture of pure indifference. "It's not my fault. Dad and Chloe are in love. She's smart. She's successful." He then looked directly at Elena, his own mother, with that same casual, terrifying disdain. "But Mom? She's just a housewife. She spends all day cooking and cleaning. What does she even know about the world? She's embarrassing." His voice was dripping with contempt. "Whenever my friends ask what my mom does, I'm ashamed to tell them. I just say she's in between jobs. Dad choosing Chloe over her makes perfect sense. It's an upgrade." Elena had always known Leo looked down on her. Margaret had been poisoning him for years, whispering toxins in his ear. She constantly reminded him that Elena was useless, that the entire family depended on Mark's income, and that only by staying loyal to his father would he have the life he deserved, the expensive sneakers, the new gaming systems, the private ski trips. Elena had always believed that one day Leo would grow up, that he would see the truth, that he would understand the depth of the sacrifice she had made, not out of weakness, but out of a fierce, protective love. She had been wrong. He was selfish to the core. For money and status, he was willing to cast his own mother aside like garbage. When he looked at her now, there was no love, no attachment. only disgust. She felt nothing for him in return. She lowered her gaze and looked at Sophia. Her daughter had quietly moved to her side and was clutching her hand. The grip was warm and firm, the only anchor in the wreckage. At least her daughter still loved her. From this moment on, Elena decided Sophia was her only child, and Leo, he could go to hell with the rest of them. It wasn't long before Mark and Chloe returned, this time with a file folder. Mark, bustling with impatient energy, shoved a divorce agreement at her. "Sign it," he commanded. "It's a standard, no-fault filing. As long as you don't make a scene and don't tell anyone the details of my affair, I'll give you and Sophia $3,000 a month in child support." His voice became sharp, the voice he used on underlings. "But if you don't cooperate, if you try to drag this out, you won't get a single penny. You have no income, Elena. You have no leverage." He glanced at his watch. "Hurry up, Chloe and I took the day off for this. As soon as we're done here, we have a reservation at L'Espalier to celebrate." Elena laughed. It was a full, hearty laugh that echoed in the sterile, silent room. He had thought it all out. How to secure his new life with Chloe, how to secure his promotion to vice president at Sunset, how to cut Elena off at the knees. But he hadn't spared a single thought for her, or for the daughter he was so casually discarding. She had given up her youth, her career, her entire identity, and in return, she was being offered a paltry $3,000 a month for the child she was expected to raise alone. "No?" she said. Mark blinked. "No? What do you mean, no?" Elena slowly stood up and walked over to her worn leather satchel by the door. She pulled out a different folder, a thick, pristine one delivered by messenger that morning. She tossed it onto the glass coffee table. It landed with a heavy, satisfying thud. "I mean, no, I will not be signing your pathetic little offer, Mark. You, however, will be signing this." She watched his face darken as he quickly scanned the top page, his eyes widening in disbelief. "This is insane! You're asking for the house to be sold in a 50-50 split? $1 million in compensatory damages, and you're still demanding $3,000 a month for Sophia? Elena, you've lost your mind." Margaret let out a dramatic, theatrical gasp. "Mary, you ungrateful witch! Mark paid for everything in this house, every nail, every shingle. If anything, you owe us for 16 years of free rent. How dare you ask for so much?" Elena smiled, a slow, smug smile she hadn't worn in nearly 2 decades. It felt good. Let's break it down, shall we? The down payment for this house, Margaret, was paid with my signing bonus from the marketing firm I left, and the mortgage, for the first 2 years, was paid from my savings. Why shouldn't I be entitled to half? She glanced at Chloe, who was no longer smiling, her face a tight mask of anxiety. Of course, she wasn't thrilled. She had gone after Mark for his money, his status. Now that half of it was threatening to slip away, she had every reason to be nervous. Elena continued, her voice calm and clear, like a CEO addressing a boardroom. "As for the compensation, before I became a housewife, my monthly salary, with bonuses, was easily over $20,000. I sacrificed 16 years of income, of promotions, of building my own retirement, for this family, for your son." She looked back at Mark. $1 million barely scratches the surface of what I lost. It's a bargain." She let the words sink in before delivering the final, devastating blow. "Sophia takes equestrian lessons, as you know. She's showing real talent. $3,000 a month barely covers her expenses, and we both know it." She looked from Mark to Chloe, holding their gaze. "If I recall correctly, Mark, you are currently the top candidate for the senior vice president position at Sunset Corporation. A promotion that comes with a massive stock package and a seat on the board." She then turned to Chloe, whose face was now pale. "And you, Dr. Benson, are a candidate for a major endowed chair at the university, a position that relies heavily on donor approval and a reputation for moral integrity." She leaned back, crossing her arms. "This is a very critical, very delicate time for both of your careers. You really don't want a public, messy scandal to ruin everything you've worked for, do you? Imagine the optics. VP candidate abandons wife of 16 years for colleague. Professor Swede for alienation of affection. It's not a good look. Chloe's face flushed a deep, ugly red. She grabbed Mark's sleeve, her voice trembling. Mark, she's threatening us. I'm scared. Mark gritted his teeth, his entire face a mask of fury. Don't worry, sweetheart, I'll handle this. He turned and glared at Elena. Are you blackmailing us? Elena gave him that same scoffing laugh. Blackmail? Oh no, Mark. I'm just giving you a friendly reminder of the facts. I'm being practical. You, of all people, should appreciate that. She looked at her own watch, a cheap Timex, and contrasted it with his gleaming new Rolex. You have 1 hour to think it over. My lawyer, Arthur Fincher, is expecting your call. If you refuse, he is prepared to file this petition immediately, along with a full, detailed account of your affair with Dr. Benson, complete with copies of your hotel receipts from your business trip to Chicago. Mark's jaw tightened. And if I still refuse? Just then, the doorbell rang. Elena smiled. Perfect timing. She walked to the door and opened it, taking a long cardboard tube from the delivery driver. Thank you, Jerry. Just what I was waiting for. She ripped open the tube and pulled out 2 large, professionally printed vinyl banners. She unrolled the first one, holding it up for them to see. It read, in bold, 3-inch letters, University Professor Chloe Benson is in love with my husband. As his wife, I'm happy to step aside and wish them luck. She unrolled the second. Sunset Corporation's VP candidate Mark Harrison, a family man who abandoned his wife and sick child. She watched as Mark's and Chloe's faces turned an ugly shade of gray. I was just going to hang these off the overpass on the interstate, she said brightly. Good for rush hour traffic, don't you think? In the end, Mark had no choice. For the sake of his career, and for Chloe's, he signed. His face was as dark as coal. Chloe's was no better. Margaret was sputtering, incoherent with rage. And Leo, her son, just stared at her, a new, unwelcome expression on his face. Fear. After finalizing the divorce at a sterile downtown office, Elena and Sophia walked out of the courthouse, separating from Mark's new family forever. Before they could leave, Margaret, ever present, sneered. Don't celebrate so soon, Elena. With my son's ability, he'll earn back every penny he gave you in just 2 years. You, on the other hand, will be broke and alone. You'll regret this. Elena arched an eyebrow, finding the words truly, deeply laughable. Ignorance is truly a blessing. If they only knew. Mark's smug smile returned as he turned to his mother. Mom, didn't you say our house was too small? Now that Elena and I are splitting the profit from the sale, I'll add a little more and buy us a beautiful new townhouse in the West District. Leo jumped up in excitement. Awesome! Chloe has incredible taste. She should decorate the new house. It will look amazing. Chloe smiled sweetly, her composure restored. Of course. And how about I design a game room for you, Leo? Just for you. Then she looked at Elena, her voice dripping with condescension. Oh, and by the way, Leo, shouldn't you stop calling me Chloe? From now on, you should call me Mom. Leo didn't even hesitate. Okay, Mom, he said cheerfully. Elena felt nothing, no anger, no pain. But Sophia, her sweet, sensitive daughter, squeezed her hand, worried that her mother might be hurt. She whispered, Mom, let's go, please. Elena smiled at her. It's fine, sweetie. She hailed a taxi. Before they could get in, Sophia tugged at her sleeve. Mom, maybe we should take the bus. It's cheaper. We have to be careful now. Her heart clenched. Sophia had heard Margaret's words and was already worried about saving money. This child was so considerate, it broke her heart. Elena winked and gave her a smile. Don't worry, sweetie. I have money. Margaret let out a mocking laugh from the curb. Money? Elena? You don't even have a house, a car, or a job. You have no skills, no career. You'll be lucky to get work cleaning bathrooms. You're just spending the last of the little money you have. Enjoy it while you can. Soon, You and Sophia will be living on the streets." Sophia's fists clenched. "We don't need you to worry about us. When I grow up, I'll take care of my mom." Margaret snorted. "A daughter? Daughters are nothing but a waste of money. You'll just abandon her the moment you get married." Chloe chimed in, smiling. "Elena, if you ever really struggle, you can count on me. Our university is always hiring cleaning staff. I'd be happy to put in a good word for you." Elena didn't say a word. She simply raised her hand, extended her middle finger in a slow, deliberate gesture, and got into the taxi with her daughter, never looking back. Their first stop was not a small, rented apartment. It was the sales office of the residences at Chestnut Hill, the most exclusive new development in the city. The sales agent, a slick man named Julian, was all smiles as he presented the properties, clearly assuming they were just browsing. "This penthouse villa is in the East Tower, a prime location," he said smoothly. "It's over 5,000 square feet, surrounded by private, landscaped terraces, and offers stunning views of the reservoir. Plus, it's fully furnished by a top Boston designer and ready to move in." Elena's parents, Henry and Clara, were already there, having met them. They had been in on the secret from the beginning. Clara, her mother, was the one holding the $320 million in a trust. "How much?" Henry asked, playing the part. "A recent price reduction," Julian said, leaning in conspiratorially. "Only 20 million. 20 million was nothing. Elena didn't hesitate. "We'll take it. Full cash payment. We can close today." Julian's eyes lit up. His entire demeanor changed, the slick salesmanship replaced by a fawning, genuine respect. Of course, madam. Please, take a seat in our VIP lounge. I will prepare the contract immediately." Before he could reply, a sharp scoff came from behind them. Well, it really is a small world. Mark and his entire family were there. Chloe, Leo, and Margaret. Margaret spoke first, her voice echoing in the opulent showroom. "Elena, what are you doing here? Mark only gave you $500,000 in the divorce, plus the million. That's not even enough to buy a bathroom in a place like this." Chloe nodded, the picture of sympathetic concern. "Elena, I get it. You still hold a grudge against Mark, so you found out we were house hunting and decided to follow us to put on a show. But let's be real, this is wildly embarrassing for you. You can't afford to even breathe the air in here." Julian, who had been enthusiastic moments ago, suddenly looked hesitant, glancing between Elena and the loud, well-dressed newcomers. Leo frowned, shaking his head. "Mom, I'm so disappointed in you. I knew you were useless, but now I see you're a liar, too. You're just making a fool of yourself." Elena's father, Henry, a man of quiet, powerful dignity, had heard enough. He stepped forward. "Watch what you say, boy," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Your father cheated on your mother and forced her out of her home, and you stand here defending him?" He turned to Mark and Chloe, his voice rising, loud enough for everyone in the showroom to hear. "Look at them. One is about to become a vice president, the other a university professor. With morals like these, do they even deserve those jobs?" The people around them, other wealthy patrons, began to whisper, their eyes turning toward Mark and Chloe, whose smiles were now frozen and hard. But Henry wasn't done. He turned back to Leo, and he slapped him. It wasn't a hard slap, but the sound, a sharp crack, echoed through the showroom like a gunshot. Leo staggered back, a hand flying to his cheek, a bright red mark blooming. He looked at his grandfather in pure, stunned shock. "Grandpa, you hit me. Why?" Henry didn't let him play the victim. "Why? Because you are an ungrateful, worthless child. Your mother sacrificed her entire life for you, and this is how you repay her. She never had the heart to punish you for your cruelty, so I will." Leo clutched his cheek, still in disbelief. "But Grandpa, Dad didn't do anything wrong. Mom is just a housewife. She did nothing but spend Dad's money. She should be grateful he didn't leave her sooner. It was Dad's money that raised me, not her." Margaret rushed forward, her face purple with rage. "How dare you hit my grandson? Elena was useless, so don't blame the child for facing reality. He's just being practical." It was too late. The whispers in the crowd had grown louder. What an ungrateful brat. His mother gave him everything, and he treats her like this? My God, he deserved more than a slap. Leo had never been publicly humiliated in his life. His face burned with shame as he looked around at the judging eyes. Then, without another word, he turned and ran out of the showroom. Margaret immediately ran after him, wailing his name. Only Mark and Chloe remained. Feeling the critical stares, Chloe forced a smile. Marriage is complicated. Elena's and Mark's relationship had problems long before I came along. Their divorce has nothing to do with me. Mark quickly took her hand. Exactly. I've wanted to divorce Elena for years. She's unstable. Chloe had nothing to do with it. Elena's mother, Clara, scoffed. Nothing to do with it? And how is it that as soon as my daughter finalized the divorce, Dr. Benson moved into her house? I'd say the biggest problem in their marriage was your husband's affair with your new mom. The onlookers were outraged. They really are a perfect pair. Shameless to the core. How disgusting. And they had the nerve to mock that poor lady for not being able to afford a house. Mark's face turned a horrible shade of red. He looked at Elena, his eyes full of hatred. Do you know why I divorced her? He shouted to the crowd. Because she's a liar. A delusional liar. She was a housewife for 16 years. She comes from an ordinary family. Where would she get the money to buy a villa? She's a fraud. The stares turned toward Elena, now with a hint of doubt. She laughed. This was the man she had loved. To clear his own name, he was slandering her. What if I do have the money to buy it? Elena asked softly. Mark sneered. If you can afford this house, right here, right now, I'll eat that potted plant. He pointed to a large ficus in the corner. Elena smiled. Don't regret saying that. She turned to the agent, Julian. Please, proceed with the verification of funds. It took the real estate company almost 45 minutes. The crowd, instead of dwindling, had only grown larger. People were whispering excitedly. Finally, Julian returned, his face pale and his hands visibly shaking. Mark smiled smugly. Well, what's the result? Her account must be empty. I told you she's a scammer. Julian looked at Mark as if he were an idiot. He cleared his throat. Excuse me, sir. Miss. Elena's mother, who is her acting trustee, has just verified liquid assets in excess of $300 million. Purchasing this $20 million villa is, and I quote, no trouble at all. The showroom went dead silent. Mark's eyes widened, his jaw dropped. What did you say? Julian, now beaming at Elena, repeated himself. Madam, would you and your family like to rest in our VIP lounge while we finalize the paperwork? We can have champagne sent up. Elena smiled. That would be lovely, Julian. She turned back to Mark, who was still frozen in disbelief. And what about that promise you just made? Mark glared at her, sputtering. It's impossible. You must have bribed him. You're a liar. You have at most $1 million. I know it. I signed the papers. The crowd erupted in laughter. Idiot! The wife you tossed aside is a multi-millionaire. You must be regretting this so much. Hey, buddy, that ficus is waiting for you. Unable to bear the public humiliation, Mark and Chloe fled in disgrace. A month later, Elena, Sophia, and Elena's parents officially moved into the penthouse. Sophia had a spacious, beautifully decorated bedroom, and next to it, an expansive study filled with books on art and design. Mom, I love you so much, Sophia said, hugging her tightly. I love you too, sweetie, Elena said, stroking her hair. By the way, you've always wanted to study design at Central St. Martin's in London. You're an excellent student. I've already hired the best tutors to help with your portfolio. We're sending you abroad. Sophia cried, her tears ones of pure joy. Daughters, Elena thought, were truly the best. Life began anew. Elena no longer had to wake up at 5 a.m. She no longer had to tolerate Margaret's criticisms or Mark's snoring. She slept in, practiced yoga on her terrace overlooking the reservoir, and started researching charitable foundations to support. Her parents commented that she looked 10 years younger, healthier, and more radiant than they had seen her in decades. One day, as she and her parents were returning from a walk, they saw a moving truck parked in the driveway of the townhouse complex behind their villa. And standing on the lawn, directing the movers, were Mark, Chloe, Leo, and Margaret. Margaret spotted them and immediately swelled with pride. "Elena, look at this, our new home. Isn't it gorgeous? So jealous, right?" Elena glanced at the townhouse. It was fine, but compared to her sprawling penthouse, it was a shoebox. She shrugged. "It's okay, I guess." Margaret sneered. "Okay? Anyone hearing you would think you live in a grand mansion? The truth is, you're still stuck in some old run-down apartment, aren't you?" Chloe chimed in with a saccharine tone. "Elena, I know you must feel awful. You were married to Mark for so long and never got to live in a villa. But I've only been with him for a few months, and here I am. It's just fate." Elena's mother scoffed. "We don't care." "Then why are you standing here watching us?" Margaret said smugly. "Clearly you're here out of jealousy." Her father Henry chuckled. "Truth be told, Margaret, we actually live in the penthouse right up there, in the East Tower. It has a much better view and is about 5 times the size. Frankly, we wouldn't even consider a house as small as yours." Mark scoffed. "The more you lie, the more you believe it. You fooled those real estate agents, but you can't fool us. You're renting. Or maybe," he added, a malicious gleam in his eye, "you're just the cleaning staff." Susan's eyes lit up. "Daniel, how clever. That's it. They're the maids. I was wondering how they could afford the uniforms. Just wait. I'll tell the real owner about your bad deeds and make sure you all lose even this job." Just then, Sophia's art history tutor, a very elegant, well-dressed woman named Dr. Evelyn Reed, arrived. Margaret immediately assumed she was the villa's owner and rushed over. "Madam, you must be the owner. I'm telling you, the people you hired, Elena and her family, are not good employees. They cannot be trusted." Dr. Reed looked at Margaret, completely bewildered. I beg your pardon? They are the owners of the villa. I am simply here to tutor young Sophia." Margaret's jaw nearly dropped to the floor. "What?" Mark was equally frustrated. "I guess Elena was hiding her true wealth from me all this time," he muttered, his face contorted in regret. "So you let a rich woman slip away?" Margaret groaned. Chloe's face visibly darkened. Mark, noticing, quickly tried to smooth things over. "Sweetheart, don't listen to her. What I feel for you has nothing to do with money." With their heads bowed, the 3 of them shuffled back to their tiny townhouse, their former arrogance completely crushed. That very evening, Elena's phone rang. It was Leo. His voice was hesitant. "Mom? How have you been lately?" Elena smiled. How pragmatic. When he thought she was poor, he wouldn't even look at her. Now that he knew she was rich, he was the first to call. "Since leaving your father and his family, I feel wonderful, Leo. If you hadn't called, I'd feel even better." "Mom, I know you're just upset," he said, ignoring her coldness. "I'm still your son, right? I heard Sophia is preparing to study in London." "Mom, you know my grades aren't great, but I want to study abroad too. Maybe the UK. It's only about $150,000 a year. You already bought a penthouse. This is nothing to you, right?" "Robert," Elena said, her voice flat, "did you forget? You chose your father. You and I have nothing to do with each other anymore." Leo, now embarrassed and angry, finally revealed the real reason for his call. "You got lucky with money. Who cares? Tell me, where did you get it?" "My grandma and dad said, you must have hidden marital assets during the divorce. If we can prove that, then half of that money legally belongs to my father. Once he gets his share, studying abroad will be a piece of cake for me." "Oh," Elena scoffed, "so now you're openly declaring your intention to sue me, and you still expect me to tell you anything useful?" "It doesn't matter. My dad is smart. He'll figure it out." Elena hung up. Let them try. The money was in her mother's trust, established long before the divorce. It was untouchable. She never expected them to be so shameless. The next morning, she was awakened by a loud commotion downstairs. Mark, Chloe, Leo, and Margaret had forced their way past the doorman and were now in her living room, arguing with her parents. "What is going on here?" Elena demanded. "They forced their way in," her father said, his face grim. "They're demanding money." Margaret raged. "Since you're clearly not struggling, Elena, you should give us back the $1 million in compensation. Plus, you should give us an additional $10 million in cash. This money is for Leo's future. We heard you're sending Sophia abroad. Leo deserves the same." "Are you all daydreaming?" Elena asked. "I'm not giving you a dime." "How can you be so heartless?" Susan shrieked. "Leo is your son." "And what about Sophia?" Elena shot back. "Have any of you ever worried about her?" Leo scoffed. "Grandma says Sophia is useless. She'll never amount to anything. You should focus on me." "Focus on you?" Elena laughed mockingly. "When your father cheated on me, your first reaction was to make sure you didn't get stuck with the poor housewife. You insulted me, you praised your new stepmother, and now you expect me to invest in you? Well, that's because you didn't have money then," Leo shouted. "If you could have given me a good life, I would have chosen you. It's your fault." "Robert," Elena said, her voice dropping to a deadly calm, "you still don't understand. I could have accepted you choosing your father for a better life, but I can't accept your betrayal. For 16 years, I stepped away from my career. I was at the same company as your father, and I was promoted faster than he was. If it wasn't for you, for your health, I would have been the senior VP. I didn't do it for thanks. But I expected, at the very least, a little gratitude. Instead, you belittled me. You betrayed me. You called the woman who destroyed our family mom. You don't deserve to be my son." For the first time, a flicker of guilt crossed Leo's face, but it vanished as quickly as it came. In the end, Elena had to call security, who called the police, to have them forcibly removed from her property. They were fed up. Elena decided to take her parents and Sophia on a long, luxurious vacation to Italy. One afternoon, as she was lounging by a pool in Tuscany, a handsome Italian man named Giuseppe massaging her shoulders, she received a frantic call from Mark. "Elena, how could you?" he roared. "We had a deal. You weren't supposed to reveal what happened. Thanks to you, both Chloe and I have lost our jobs. You broke the agreement. You have to give the compensation money back." "What are you talking about, Mark? I'm in Italy." He sent her a link to a video. Someone, a bystander in the real estate office, had secretly recorded the entire confrontation. The video, titled "Man Dumps Housewife, Then Discovers She's a Multi-Millionaire," had gone viral. In it, Mark and Chloe's faces were perfectly clear. The public humiliation and the clear evidence of their moral failings had led both of their employers to terminate their contracts. "And what does that have to do with me?" Elena said, bored. "I didn't record it, and I didn't upload it. If you want to blame someone, blame yourselves for acting like fools in public." Mark fell silent. Then his tone suddenly changed, becoming sickeningly sweet. "Elena, Mary, my love, I still have feelings for you. I was confused when I got involved with Chloe, but now that I'm with her, I finally realize that the person I truly love is you. I'll divorce Chloe tomorrow. Can we get back together? I'll be better, I promise." Elena almost choked. Giuseppe, the masseuse, noticed her frown. "Signora, am I pressing too hard? Does it hurt?" Elena smiled up at him. "No, Giuseppe, it's perfect. I feel wonderful." Mark, on the other end, heard the man's voice. "Elena? Who is that? What are you doing?" he demanded, his tone accusatory. Elena chuckled. "Obviously, Mark, I'm doing things that make me happy. Let's be real. You're a middle-aged, balding, sloppy, unhygienic, and snoring cheater. I wouldn't get back together with you if you were the last man on earth." She hung up and blocked his number. When they returned from Italy 2 months later, they learned that Mark's family had fallen apart. Without jobs, they couldn't afford the townhouse mortgage and were evicted. Margaret blamed Chloe for everything, calling her a walking disaster. Chloe and Mark were constantly fighting. Leo's grades had plummeted, and he had reportedly fallen in with a bad crowd. Then came the final, pathetic act. Elena was at home when her mother received a frantic call from Margaret. "Oh my God, Clara! Leo has been kidnapped. The kidnappers are demanding a $30 million ransom in 3 days. If we don't pay, they said they'll kill him." Her voice trembled with fake sobs. "We don't have that kind of money. Please, you have to help." Elena's mother, panicked, turned to her. "Mary, I know you're angry, but it's a life at stake. We can't just stand by." Elena held up a hand, her mind working quickly. "Mom, Dad, don't you think this is suspicious? Mark and his family are completely broke. What kind of kidnappers would target Leo? They're not targeting Leo, they're targeting us." Her mom's eyes widened. "You're saying this is staged?" "It's highly possible," Elena said. "But we can't risk it. We'll pay the ransom. But the moment Leo is returned, we call the police and have them investigate." They transferred the $30 million. 3 hours later, Mark called to say Leo was safe. He made sure to emphasize, "Mary, don't call the police." "The kidnappers said if we involve the police, they'll come for our entire family." That was all the confirmation Elena needed. The moment she hung up, she went straight to the police station and reported the incident, along with her suspicions. The police worked quickly. In less than 3 days, they uncovered the truth. The kidnapping was a complete fabrication, staged by Mark, Margaret, and Chloe. Leo had been hiding out at a cheap motel. The police found them not by tracking the kidnapping, but by tracking the money. Margaret and Chloe had already used $5 million to buy back their old house. Daniel had taken $3 million to a casino and lost it all. In the end, Robert, being a minor but a willing participant, was sentenced to 3 years in a juvenile correction facility. Mark, Chloe, and Margaret each received 10 years in state prison for fraud and extortion. Before the sentencing, Elena went to see them one last time. They pleaded for mercy, begging her to forgive them. She refused. For her family's safety, the best place for them was behind bars. On the day of the sentencing, Leo, in handcuffs, saw Sophia standing next to Elena. Sophia was radiant, confident, and full of life, discussing her upcoming departure for London. Seeing the life he had thrown away, Leo finally broke down. Tears streamed down his face as he sobbed, "Mom, Mom, I was wrong. I was truly wrong, please." Elena felt nothing. She would never forget the cold, detached way he had looked at her in their living room. He didn't realize his mistakes. He was only regretful because he had bet on the wrong horse. He was still, and always would be, that selfish boy. A year later, Elena drove Sophia to the airport. As they watched her plane take off, her parents sighed. "Sophia has grown up," her dad said. Her mom looked at Elena. "Mary, you should consider getting married again. It would be nice to have someone by your side." Elena laughed, a genuine happy laugh. "Why would I ever bring unnecessary trouble into my life? I feel happier than ever. I have wealth, I have freedom, and I have a family that truly loves me." She had finally realized the lesson. For 16 years, she had poured her entire being into others, believing her value was as a wife and a mother. She had been wrong. Her value was in herself. The money wasn't the prize, the freedom was. The freedom to be, to live, and to never, ever again be just a housewife.